uncomfortable thing to be held in oppression, to be held in bondage, to be enslaved and then segregated. A lot of people don't understand we were enslaved, chattel slaves for 246 years. We only been emancipated from that for 160 years, which means that we were enslaved longer than we've been free, which is why some of us still got slave ways, old slave habits, passed down 2 or 3 generations. But if you heard Reverend Mason this morning, if you speak up and you speak out, even if you still got to get rid of some of the generational habits passed down, if you stand up, your change will come. Your change will come. Your change. Your change. Sitting high and looking low, got all the degrees, got all the privileges. If they won't speak up, the rocks gonna cry out. And you need to listen to the rocks. So many people got in line in front of cameras when we saw what happened just a few weeks ago to our brother who was killed, choked to death on the subway. But I want to see how many gonna line up with Shawana Vaughn, so we don't have another brother with mental illness, a victim of a murder. Shawana didn't come from Harvard. She wasn't educated at Yale. She wanted the rocks crying out, don't just mourn me, legislate me. And if we stand with her, your change will come. Your change will come. Your change. Don't you believe it? Your change. Oh, yes, it will. Your change. Change will. Choir, give them a big hand. Give them a big hand. Certainly we're happy to be with you another Saturday morning for the Saturday Action Network rally. We are happy to be with you that are here live at the House of Justice, 145th Street and Lenox Avenue. And you that are listening live on 1190 WLIB AM in New York, and you that are watching us on various media platforms, we're happy to be with you to give our weekly report on where the action is. Give a hand to our presider today, Katrina Jefferson. Our musical director, Minister Tyrone Richardson, and give my band, my drummer Chris, and the guitar players. Give a hand, Reverend Sean Mason II. Gave us a word about Elizabeth. Some of y'all, some Elizabeths up in here somewhere. I ain't calling nobody out. Let me first say that I want to give our collective condolences to Bishop Williams, Bishop Elizabeth Williams, who passed. Her family, her daughter, Robin, has been an engineer and coordinator on my Sunday morning broadcast. Many of you listen to me on Sunday morning with Al Sharpton. It wouldn't be on there without Robin, who lost her mother. And I want to give our public, as I've given our private condolences for the passing of Bishop Elizabeth Williams. I also want to stress what was announced that on this Tuesday at 11 o'clock, our Second Chance Committee and members of NAN are going back to the Queen's Courthouse about the case of Nolan Ferris and Reverend Keith Gatson. Y'all stand up. These are two brothers that we are standing with. We feel after complete review that they were wrongfully incarcerated and convicted, and we want the process to give them their life back. You can't give them their time back, but you can clear their names. And our committee's going out. Reverend has worked on this with them, and we're gonna build it up. We're not gonna stop until we get justice for Nolan Ferris and Keith Gatson. And I want to also congratulate, first of all, before I go there, I want to reiterate what was already announced this morning. There's no one I know in my life that has served more consistent, stronger, and been more productive than Bishop Herbert Dortch. Come on, y'all can do better than that. And he wanted to announce Arthur Miller Day, and we should be honored he announced it here, because it's a historic day. Let me explain to you that what he's talking, 1978, when Arthur Miller was killed, as he said, it re-energized the Black Power movement. Now, a lot of y'all don't know history. A lot of y'all joined the movement, went to 2 rallies, and became an expert. And then start condemning the folks that was there before you. I know that trick, because we used to do that when I was younger. But when Dr. King was killed in '68, there was a great debate going on in Black America between the civil rights folks and the Black Power folks.
That's right.
You know, we don't like to talk about it, but there was this difference of where we were going. And you know, a lot of y'all don't like to talk about stuff at home, but you live with each other long enough, you're gonna have a difference. And it's better to deal with the differences openly than for the kids to hear y'all fighting in your room and get traumatized because they thought everything was lovey-dovey. Let's welcome our people living, joining us from around the world on Impact Television. So in the split, I come out of Church of God in Christ, Bishop Washington, my mother put me with Reverend William Jones and Jesse Jackson. I was 13 when Dr. King got killed. So I grew up on the civil rights side. I was the youth director of New York Breadbasket. The chairman of Breadbasket, New York, was Reverend William Jones. National director, Jesse Jackson. So they mentored me. But the vice chairman was Bishop Herbert Dortch. And the idea of him being vice chair is that he could bring in a crowd that didn't trust the preachers that he worked with. But still he was a bishop in the Pentecostal church. So he became the intersection. You know, now we got Professor Crenshaw. Kimberly talks about intersection. Before we could intersect with others, and we should and we will, August 26th we're doing it in Washington, we had to first intersect in our community. And it's not unusual because we were different tribes in Africa. Everybody wasn't one tribe, and everybody wasn't one nation. You know, we talk about Africa like it's one country. I'm going back to Africa. What part? Rebel, you've been to Africa? Several places in Africa. Some folks speak different languages, have different customs, different situations. So don't think we're going to get over here and be the same thing. Just because somebody different don't make them wrong. You have children, your children are different. Your children have the same parents but are not the same result. The difference between Dominique and Ashley. One want credit, the other want cash. You just got to understand. So in this division between black power and civil rights, James Meredith got shot, leading a march against fear in Mississippi. And part of the reason he was doing the march was to show that they were not afraid. Now you got to remember, Medgar Evers had been killed in Jackson, Mississippi, which was one of the impetus to the 63 march. He was killed about a month and a half before the March on Washington. You know, we always just act like these marches that happened and Dr. King had a dream and some angel come walk over in the middle of the night and told him what to say. That is not what happened. Medgar Evers got killed and drove a lot of people to the march that wasn't going. And 3 years after the march, John Lewis had been the head of the Student Nonviolent Committee. They had been part of that committee that was more, quote, militant than the rest. They elected Stokely Carmichael, and Stokely Carmichael started making a slogan popular called Black Power. He didn't author it, he made it popular. Adam Clayton Powell here in Harlem was talking about Black Power for a long time. Others was talking about Black Power. But Stokely made it possible, made it popular. So the fight was between the two. Now, they decided that they were going to go down, since James Meredith had gotten shot in Mississippi, and continue the march. Man shot him, talking about you coming down here saying no, not the fear, let me show you what the fear, and shot James Meredith. Meredith didn't die. Dr. King and the civil writers and Stokely Carmichael decided they were going to start where Meredith was shot and continue the march. Many years later, Stokely, who renamed himself Kwame Ture, came to the House of Justice when we were on Madison 125th. And he sat and talked with me. And he said that, I'm going to tell you what happened, Sharpton. I said, what? He said, we got to marching and all the national media was there because Dr. King was there. He said, and we waited till we started marching. And when they started singing, We Shall Overcome, we started yelling Black Power. He said, media never heard Black Power. He said, all the way through it was between We Shall Overcome, Black Power. We Shall Overcome, Black Power. And the rallies every night, it went through that. He said, I want to tell you something about Dr. King. He said, I told him later, I said, you know, we used you, Dr. King. We knew the national media would cover you. So we didn't want to cut you off, but we wanted to put our slogan out there. We use you to get Black Power on national media. And he said, rather than him get into my case, he just patted me on the back and said, I've been used before, Stokely. He said, just do the people right. He said, that's why when Dr. King was killed 2 years later, he said, I cried at his funeral more than his children, because I realized that he was big enough to let us grow and not fight us over tactics. You got to be big enough to let folks disagree with you and not be disagreeable, because the people don't need to see you fighting. They need to see all of us using whatever tactic we got to go forward. Ain't nobody blocking you. I tell a lot of folks, I don't believe what you're doing. Good. Don't come on Saturday morning. Do what you do. I ain't calling no rally in the lobby of your building. Tell it. Don't be messing with us. We ain't messing with you. Now, in that fight that was in New York, I keep telling folks, New York was not a Dr. Martin Luther King friendly town.
Tell him, man.
The doctor here, he tell you that. New York was a black power town. This was more Malcolm than Martin. Y'all need to know the history so y'all don't get all jilted when stuff happens now. Because there's differences now. And we can work through them if we understand there was always differences. When I was growing up, I went to Tilton High School. And in Tilton High School, most of the Afro-American club was Black Nationalist, Black Power. I was breadbasket, which was considered too moderate. You could hardly get a date in school because you wasn't Black Power. And all the fine girls was Black Power. I'm not saying the others wasn't, because some of them still living and might be listening to the radio. So I gotta be careful I thread through this one. In the midst of that, I'm trying to give you all context. In the midst of that, Arthur Miller gets killed. 1978. We had a killing, Claude Reese. There was a series of killings. Arthur Miller, who was a local businessman, became a real spark. Reverend Herbert Daughtry came in and led that battle. They formed the Black United Front. And this is where there became an intersection in New York. If it had not been for that intersection, then some years later, when we went to Howard Beach and Bensonhurst on into us starting Nan, could not have happened. Because you needed a climate set that was going to get the people acclimated to fighting. Now, in real time, there may have been tactical debates, but if the Arthur Miller case had not become an issue, we would not have been able to make an issue out of Michael Griffith and other things. That's why one of the things I was telling Bishop Daughtry a couple of weeks ago, we went to Buffalo around the 10 victims of that massacre, that I thank God he lived long enough to see a lot of what he did come together. Dr. King didn't live to see Obama become president or Kamala become vice president. So I'm glad Daughtry lived to see this. That's why we're proud when he comes into Nan on Saturdays when he's in town. So when on the 17th at 12 noon, House of the Lord Pentecostal Church, 415 Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, they're going to salute and remember that day. And it's more than just remembering Arthur Miller. It is celebrating the movement in New York where civil rights and black power got married. And the presider was Bishop Herbert Daughtry. I remember one of the reasons that I became open to it is many of the preachers in Breadbasket were very traditional Mason and, you know, seminary trained and all that. I remember they used to have Saturday rallies in the Fellowship Hall, basement of Bethany Baptist Church. That's where I learned Saturday rallies from. Jesse started it in Chicago, came to Brooklyn. And I remember Reverend Daughtry, like it was yesterday, I was a kid. He came in, he had on African garb and African hat. And I said, Reverend Jones, who is that? And why is he dressed like that? Oh, that's Herb Daughtry. He brought that kind of Afrocentricity to Breadbasket. Then Jesse would come to town. Jesse was younger. He twice my age at that time, but he was younger. He had a big afro, never wore a suit and tie. I never saw Jesse in a suit and tie until about 72, 73. He would wear buckskin vest or dashiki. He had a big afro. And though he was on King's staff, he brought us over to Imam Baraka. And he said there is no contradiction in black power and nonviolent civil rights. So growing up under Jesse, I grew up under the nexus of both. And that's what we're going to celebrate together, all of us, on the 17th of June. And that whole story with Mississippi, this week they're dealing with the 60th anniversary of the death of Medgar Evers, and his family has asked me to keynote. I'm going to Mississippi and speak down there to keynote that as we drive toward the march on August 26th in Washington, where the emphasis was on the Medgar Evers killing. I want to also congratulate Mark Morial, president of National Urban League, who celebrates 20 years as the head of the National Urban League. And he's done a good job. I remember when he first came to New York, he had been mayor of New Orleans, as his father was mayor before him, and he came up to Ron Daniels, another one, black nationalist leader and scholar here in New York, told him, if you want to work with something in New York, you need to come to National Action Network. And he came. And we've been working together ever since, all those 20 years. We rarely do anything without checking with each other and usually do things together. And I want to give a big hand to Mark Morial. I also want you all, and I know some of the media is listening and watching, am I right? I want you all to take seriously the appeal made by Shawana Vaughn. This issue, and give a hand to Senator Jabari Bridgeport. And this is serious. We cannot get away from what she is saying. One of the reasons that I take it personally is because all of us have had people in our families that has had mental health issues and had mental health issues in jail. And I think when Dominique told me about Shawana, I wanted to come because we all knew her and knew of this law. I thought it was appropriate to deal with the Shawana Vaughn bill, one, because of the timing. They need to do it this session. But secondly, is that you cannot have all of this up and down, jumping up and down about Jordan Neely and not deal with the issue of mental health. We all, every Saturday, talk about justice for Jordan Neely. I did the eulogy at his funeral. I'm working with Reverend Johnny Green and the family. But one of the legislative responses to Jordan Neely, in the time of Jordan Neely, we need to pass the Shawana Vaughn bill in August. Don't give us false condolences without dealing with legislation. You know, I talk a lot about my father. One of the things that I only talk about every now and then, my sister went to jail. My sister, there was only 2 of us that had the same father and mother. I have other stepsisters, brother, but there was 2 of us that had the same father and my mother. Don't look at me funny, my papa was a Rolling Stone. And so was some of y'all, they may not have told you. You travel like I do, and you look at somebody that look like you, it might be that. But my sister went to jail and was put in psychiatric treatment. Wasn't nothing wrong, but she had to be treated. So I know this, and I'm only sharing this, being upfront. So you'd understand that Shawana not talking about something over there. This is as close as our own families. And you can't lock up an illness. You have to treat an illness. You can't just throw bars in front of it. Because once you bring the bars back and put them out, they still have the illness. And when they respond to the illness, you talk about them like they're a statistic. Crime going up. No, the funds didn't come down. And you try to spook people rather than remedy them. So I hope the people stand in the Senate and in the House with Jabari Brisport and do the right thing. Get this out of the committee, even if you don't know the vote, put it out there. Let us see the roll of who's going to vote in the Assembly and the Senate. Put their name on the roll so we know who's about dealing with mental health and dealing with incarceration. So I want her to know we're with her and we support this legislation. And I want you to, as I get into, let me remind folks that we are, you that are watching around the country, we're organizing very diligently, and we're going to make mental health one of the planks. Martin Luther King III and Andre Waters King and the Drum Major Institute in conjunction with National Action Network, and we've got the support of various groups from various communities. One of the things we are marching about August 26th is the rise in hate crimes. You realize that crimes have gone up, hate crimes have gone up against blacks, against Latinos, against LGBTQ, against Asians, against Jews. And we met with all the national groups and said, we all need y'all to be there together. We're not having a commemoration march, we're having a continuation march. People talk about, well, I don't know about the Latinos. Well, if we are all being victimized by the same folk, we all gonna have to fight the same folk to save each other, to save ourselves. You gotta remember, if you in a house, I grew up in an apartment building, tenement in Brownsville. If you have an apartment on the 3rd floor, have a fight, and you're on the 10th floor, you can't be talking about, well, that 7th floor is down, ain't got nothing to do with me. Because if they don't put the fire out on the 3rd floor, the fire won't get to the 10th floor. And when you be running out the building in your drawers, you got to run through the 3rd floor to get to the outside. So we need to stand together. You got folk running for president that are running on. I'm going to edit out of history all of them. They boycotting companies because they this Pride Month. They boycotting companies because they advertise something with LGBT or Q or trans. And people say, well, I can't deal with LGBTQ. Well, you can, and you have. First gays I met was in church. Don't be talking about what you couldn't deal with. What you couldn't deal with was them coming out. As long as they was quiet, it was all right. But we all knew they was gay, and you knew they was gay. So quit being a hypocrite and deal with what it is. You can have your opinion, but don't shut people down. I go to Greenwich Village. I was a teenager. I was in the church when I met them, and we all knew. And they all gave money. I ain't heard nobody say, I don't want no gay money. So we want everybody from all segments to meet us in Washington, August 26th. You can register at www.nationalactionnetwork.net, and we will let you know what buses is leaving from your state, and where, if you're driving, you can find out where you park, and we've got all that secured in Washington. And if you can't go online, you can call the toll-free number 1-877-626-4651, 1-877-626-4651. Let me say that I was glad with some reservations to see the debt limit bill pass this week. The reservations I had is that I did not agree with work requirements being raised from 49 to 54 years old, and other things that will give more of a burden on many of us. But the alternative was with these crazy and sensitive people that would have let it go into debt, millions of workers would have been dismissed. And I believe these folks had no problem driving it over the cliff. If you think they just bluffed it, maybe you missed the 2016 election when they elected Donald Trump. Because anybody that would elect him, and he's leading in the polls to run again, they ain't no time to call they bluff. They are bona fide politically crazy. And we must salute those. One of the things that I complained about, and I'm going to deal with this on my show tonight. I have a couple of senators on tonight and tomorrow. Politics Nation with Al Sharpton, live at 5 on MSNBC. It is Senator Jabari Brisport's favorite show. At least he's going to say that as long as he's up in this platform. But I'm going to deal with on the show. As they give credit to President Biden, they should. And they give credit to McCarthy and whatever he did. Don't forget the deal wouldn't have been cut without Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries is the leader of the Democrats in the Congress. He was in the meetings at the table. And we not only glad we didn't go over the brink, we salute our homeboy, Hakeem Jeffries. I think that, you know, it is always interesting to be Reverend Daughtry, who is not given credit. Only thing, somebody online, one of the news sites online, talking about why did Hakeem have on soft-bottom sneakers in the Oval Office. I mean, just crazy stuff. Like the president don't come down sometime in relaxed clothes. Clinton used to go jogging. He wasn't jogging in no pinpointed shoes. And he came through the Oval Office. But they want to make an issue about anything. Any distraction. That's why, you know, the documentary they put out on me, the Loudmouth, showed you what they would do. They take anything. They talk about me being in tracksuits and medallions. That's how we dressed in the 80s. I grew up with Spike Lee, Russell Simmons. We dressed like Run DMC. I wasn't old enough to be dressed. Plus, we would always have marches that I ended up going to jail. I've been to jail about 32 times, several times for months at a time. I wasn't wearing my good suits to jail. But they want to pinpoint that. And I got the documentary Loudmouth this guy. In fact, it's on Apple now and going on Showtime on Juneteenth. So you that listeners can see it. One of the things that is important about the march on August 26th and what we're talking about doing in the state of New York with Shawana Von Bill is you got to always deal with law, because law is what enforces inequality and unfairness. Don't forget that after they freed us from human bondage, after Lincoln gave the Emancipation Proclamation, which was only a presidential order. That was not the law. That's why they had to go in and get the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. But once he signed the presidential order, they began then trying to find a way to legislate the same thing. So when you had the battle between the North and the South, y'all need to get this, because a lot of folk that be talking about, I don't believe in voting and I don't believe in politics, don't understand the reason why you vote is you elect the legislators that are going to put in the legislation. Hello. And if you put in the legislation, then you got some basis to fight on. That's right. And I think that many of us, I forgot to announce when I was dealing with the local, that it's this Friday that they're having the councilman's forum here in Brooklyn, our national as a North, in Manhattan, Harlem, 9th District. Two of the candidates are here this morning. Inez Dickens and Yusef Salaam. Is Al Taylor here too? But all of them will be here on Friday at 6 o'clock. And our head of operations, Reverend Malcolm Byrd, and Derek Perkison will be hosting it. And Don Jones, our political action committee, is part of it. And Don, I need you to have a serious meeting, because I see they have Perkinson's picture and Malcolm Byrd's picture up here. I don't see your picture on the flyer. That's misogynist. Ashley may be picking in your office, Malcolm. Got the two men up there. This is not. So you that don't know who to vote for, want to hear the questions, be here Friday night, and they will be doing the forum. As I was saying, laws, legislation. That's why when you are getting ready to vote, you to vote who you feel can get the laws you want through, or that can kill the laws you don't want through. Eric Garner's mother here every Saturday, Gwen Carter. We had to get the Eric Gardner no chokehold law made law. So not only did we rally, we had to go to Albany and get votes, like we had to go with Shawana. Because if you don't change the law, they can continue to do things without any fear of accountability. We, for example, we now got to revisit the law to where making chokeholds illegal for civilians. Because you got a chokehold law, Eric Garner law, that says that law enforcement can. But they ain't said nothing about civilians which is how Neely's trying to defend himself, that he didn't break the law, he was in self-defense when he put the chokehold on. Well, you need to have the law expanded now where civilians can't use it, because it is a deadly use. I don't know how you're going to say you're self-defense when you come up from behind somebody in the first place who never said nothing to you or threatened you, but that's another part of this. So what happened was, after the Emancipation Proclamation, after the 13th, 14th Amendment, so we went from proclaiming slaves are free to the law was you couldn't have slaves. They came back another way. They made a law called the Fugitive Slave Law. The Fugitive Slave Law gave them a way to where even if one of our ancestors left the plantation and was able to get to a free state, they had the right to go in a free state and bring him back. Think about that a minute now. You're in slavery, you're on a plantation in Virginia, in Georgia, in Mississippi. Your dream is that I'm going to get out of here some kind of way. You know, had slave rebellion start all the way back since we got here. You know, they act like we come off the slave ship docile, singing and loving where we was. There was always slave rebellion. That's why Denmark BC got hung. Don't act like we were all just going on with the program. So you got those that were sitting on the plantation plotting how they were going to get away. Now they got a law. It don't matter where you went with the fugitive slave laws, you could be recaptured and brought back to the state that you ran from and could be penalized or reassigned to your plantation. So I want you to understand that, which also comes down through our history, come down through our families, where a lot of our dysfunction, you don't understand where it comes from. Some of it ends up with mental health issues. Can you imagine the stress your great-grandfather, great-grandmother lived with, knowing no matter where I go, I'm either going to be a slave or a target of the slave master? You worried about if they're going to have happy hour at your job. They had to worry that they would never be free. Yet they lived with that stress and that trauma. What brought them through was their hope that if they could hold on, that their children and their children's children would go on and take advantage of their standing up. That's why I'm so offended about those that get in position and forget those that put them in position. We did not suffer for you to get a big title and sit back talking about how you made it on your own. If there was not a struggle, you would not be where you are. Nobody invited you to be successful. We had to fight to make it possible for success to be within your grasp. I spoke yesterday. Rich Lou Dennis, who owns Essence Magazine, Black Billionaire, had me speak to a group of entrepreneurs out in the Hamptons. And I drove out there, rode out there, spoke to them, and I told them that there is a new epidemic that we've got to treat called Negro amnesia. There's Negroes that forgot where they come from and forgot how they got where they are. I go to Washington, there's Negro amnesia all over the place. They broke out in Albany, Jabari. I'm gonna give you a shot. in the arms, so I'm gonna give you some vaccination. So they don't get you. People get up talking about, well, I'm in this committee. I do this. You do nothing. If folk had marched for Arthur Miller, and how it would be if we didn't break down this old boys club from Albany to Washington, you would not be nowhere. I tell a story every now and then. That reporter came to me from the Daily News, 2007. Said to me, we doing our Black History Month thing next month, February for Black History Month. Said, we want to do a trace of your family tree. Is it all right with you? I said, yes, all right with me. Sat down there about the first week in January. Came back about a week later and said, do you know Coleman Sharpton? I said, yeah. Who was Coleman Sharpton? I said, that was my grandfather. He said, well, his name was Coleman Sharpton Jr. His daddy was Coleman Sharpton Sr. And Coleman Sharpton Sr. was enslaved in Edgefield, South Carolina. I said, no, my folks was from Florida. He said, no, when his slave owner died, his mother, the slave owner's wife and them had gone to Florida working, and he was a gift from her cousin to send the slaves down to Florida. That's how your great-grandfather got to Florida. And the gift from the one that sent her was the great-uncle of Strom Thurmond, the segregationist. That's who my great-grandfather was. So think about my great-grandfather, Coleman Sharpton. I went down and saw his grave. Coleman Sharpton grew up with the stress of, are they gonna come get me? It went right through my grandfather, into my father, into me. This is where we come from. That's right. So when people I meet, Daughtry meet, CEOs, that be talking about how their family went back to the Revolutionary War. Well, my family went back to the African slave trade. I ain't ashamed of it. It was shameful what was done to them. We're just 2 generations away from segregation. My mother grew up sitting on the back of the buses. My daddy couldn't go to school. You talk about why we want reparations? Because you got to repair the damage done. My mother wasn't ignorant, but she didn't have access to intelligence. Difference between being stupid and then having dumb people lock you out the schoolhouse. But she had enough sense to get her children what she didn't have. That's why I don't care who you think you are. You owe the next generation more than what we have. Well, the problem is the black family. Well, the problem is that you broke up the black family. And we still trying to bring that back together. How you gonna, wait a minute now, how you 3 generations after it was against the law for us to marry? About 3, 4 generations ago. Against the law for us to marry. Couldn't name our children after us. Our wives were at your disposal. And now you're going to come 150 years later and talk to me about the family? Yes, we want our family together. Yes, we preach against that. But don't act like there's not some historic investment in the breakdown of our family. Tell the story of what happened. and how it happened, and how we still struggle with knowing who we are. My name, Sharpton, was the name of my great-granddaddy's slave owner. I don't know my name. You don't know your name. Our name was our property label.
That's right. My God.
I'm talking about to this day.
That's right. Right. That's right.
That's our label.
That's right.
That's why if you buy something and see somebody stamp on it, property of, that's what they said. Property of Sharpton. That's how they labeled my great-granddaddy. Because we were their property. I didn't know my great-grandfather. My grandfather, he was his son. Don't be talking about I got a chip on my shoulder. I got blood in my veins. And as long as I got that blood in my veins, I'm going to fight to live up to the dreams and the promise that my great-grandfather would have expected of me. But the good news is that through all of that, Red Bird, through it all, God blesses us anyhow. I was reading the other day the story about Abraham. You know, a lot of preachers don't want to get here. Abraham wanted a child. His wife Sarah couldn't conceive. And Sarah told him to lay with Hagar, her maidservant, who was an Egyptian woman. I want you to get this right now. Abraham didn't slip off with Hagar. It was agreed upon with Abraham and Sarah that he would lay with Hagar and have a child. Is it in the book? Hagar and Abraham had a child called Ishmael.
That's right. My middle name.
Somebody said their middle name. After Ishmael was born, God blessed Sarah's womb where Sarah could have a child. And Sarah had a child named Isaac. Now, read the whole story. A lot of us preach Abraham, Isaac, go to the mountain, God deliver. But wait a minute. Let's go back over here to Hagar and Ishmael. Now that they had a child, Sarah, who told Abraham to lay with Hagar, said, you got to get your mistress and the baby out of here. And they disowned and threw Hagar out. Hagar called on God. Hagar pled to God. I didn't do nothing wrong, Lord. I did what they agreed. I bought a child. Now I'm here with this baby with nothing. And she begged God to hear her cry. And an angel came. The Bible says she called God El Roi, named God. And God said, don't worry. Even though his daddy threw him out, Ishmael, I'm going to build a great nation from you. God didn't forget about Ishmael. And the reason I love that story is even though I'm the child of a slave, I'm the one you threw out. I'm the one you said would never be nothing. I'm the one that you sent to the worst schools. I'm the one that you gave the worst diet. I'm the one you wouldn't give health care. I'm the one that you didn't cover me. But even though you threw my mama out, God promised he'd build a great nation under me anyhow. I didn't come from the big house. I come from the castaway. I come from those thrown out. That's why I don't care if you're black from Africa, or black from the Caribbean, or black from down south. or black from Harlem. I don't care if you're gay or straight or undecided. We have a house of justice for the Ishmaels of the world. There's a house that talked to God. And God said, I'm going to build a new nation where the first will be last and the last will be first. And the lion and the lamb will lay down together. God will make a way somehow. I don't have to live in the big house. I'm going to build a house of my own because God will give us strength anyhow. That's why y'all talk about I work too hard, but you don't understand when I think about it, where I came from, where my ancestors come from. I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me. Nobody told me. Nobody told me the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far. I don't believe he brought me this far. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me now.